Thank you so much for joining us this morning for Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. The ballot is now set for November's election. In the U.S. Senate race, author J.D. Vance won the Republican nomination. He has the endorsement of former President Donald Trump. Vance will face Congressman Tim Ryan, who won the Democratic nomination on Tuesday night. Here's what both candidates had to say after their victories.
Let me just say something about the very tough primary that we just had. And it was tough. I'm not going to pretend that it wasn't. A lot of negative ads out there. I'm sure a lot of you saw the negative ads. I'd be shocked if you hadn't turned on the TV and seen my fat head in the past 6 months. Probably not happy about it. But let me just say something about the competitors in the race, okay? Thank you. I don't know who said that, but thank you. My wife likes the beard too, so that's a good thing. But first, to Matt Dolan, okay? Matt Dolan, a lot of disagreements with Matt Dolan. Let's just be honest. But Matt Dolan had a very professional, a very well-resourced campaign. And one of the things I want to say about Matt is that he could have ran an ugly campaign, but instead he ran a campaign about issues, about substance. He's been a great public servant for this country, and I think our party was better for the campaign that Matt Dolan ran. So thank you, Matt.
Good parents, born in Ohio, opportunity to do just about anything, and we're lucky. We have a great family here, like so many of you do, and that's part of the opportunity here. Our niece Ashley and her future husband Jake are here. Families support each other, right? That's what we do. That's what our communities were built on. And to me, that's the backbone of Ohio, our families. And I think a lot about my grandfather. I think about my grandfather and his life and the trajectory of him and that generation of people. And my grandfather was a steel worker, Tim Berga, for 40 years. And he had a good living, made a good living. And he made a good living that he didn't have to work 50 or 60 or 70 hours a week. He didn't need 2 jobs.
Now, in the race for governor, Ohio voters will choose between current governor Republican Mike DeWine and former Dayton Mayor Democrat Nan Whaley. She's the first woman in Ohio history to be nominated for governor.
This is a historic moment for the Democratic Party and for all of Ohio. And I want every little girl listening or watching to know that this is possible. Now I have to start with a few thank yous. Thank you to my husband Sam for being there with me no matter what. Thank you to my parents. Growing up, my dad worked at the GM plant and my mom worked at the laundromat when he got laid off. The values of hard work and resolve that they instilled in me is why I am here today. Thank you to my entire campaign team who got us here, especially my campaign manager, John Hagner. And you all, thank you to the best senator in the country, Sherrod Brown, and all of our other supporters and endorsers.
I am so optimistic about the future of this state. This is our time. This is our time in history. We're seeing companies come off the East Coast, come off the West Coast. They're tired of a high cost of living. They're tired of high taxes, high regulations. They're coming to Ohio. We've seen example after example after example where these companies are moving to Ohio. We talk a lot about Intel. We're very, very proud of Intel. When this state has had no experience in making these chips, yet we were able to get Intel to come to Ohio. Why did they come to Ohio? Because they know what we know. There's no better place to raise a family. There's no better place to live. There's no better place to start a business. There's no better place to grow a business than right here in the state of Ohio. This is a state that has so much going for it.
The candidates for governor could not be more polar opposites. 10 TV's Kevin Landers examines where each one stands on the issues that matter to you.
There's no better place to grow a business than right here in the state of Ohio.
He's a 75-year-old career politician who led Ohio out of the pandemic.
This is a historic moment for the Democratic Party.
She's the first woman in Ohio history to be nominated for governor. Mike DeWine of Cedarville and Nan Whaley of Dayton live about a half hour from each other, but they are miles apart on the issues that impact the state. Abortion is the clear divider between them.
If we re-elect Mike DeWine, abortion will be criminalized in Ohio, no question.
For 40 years, I have voted on abortion issues. I believe we have an obligation to protect the most vulnerable members of our society.
Gun violence is something both candidates are passionate about, but from different angles. After the mass shooting in Dayton, Whaley and DeWine came together for tougher gun control legislation. DeWine flip-flopped, signing into law Senate Bill 215, allowing Ohio residents 21 and older to conceal firearms they are legally allowed to own without training or permits. DeWine defended his record on crime Tuesday.
This administration is putting $250 million into our local police departments, number one. Number two, we have already created 4 narcotics intelligence centers that are working to help the police solve violent crime.
DeWine supports legislation that would increase prison time for criminals convicted of violent crimes, and he's pushed to have outstanding warrants in Ohio entered into a national database.
Today, we now have 90% of them that are in the national database. That came about because of what this administration and this governor and this lieutenant governor did.
Whaley is running on an anti-corruption platform and says if elected, she'll require everyone in her administration to take an ethics pledge. She says decades of Republican control at the State House have led to scandal after scandal, including the largest bribery scandal in Ohio history involving First Energy and House Bill 6.
4 years ago, we were standing here talking about the electronic classrooms of tomorrow. You had a big donor, bad idea, sucking money out of public education. 6 years ago, you had the payday lenders. Big donor, bad idea, sucking money out of poor communities. Over and over again, these guys don't think it's wrong, and that's why we have to change the entire system to have a complete overhaul.
DeWine supporters don't seem worried about the State House scandals of the past. In the primary, DeWine earned more votes than both of the Democrat candidates, Nan Whaley and John Cranley, combined. Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Governor DeWine says since elected, he's cut taxes for Ohioans by more than $2 billion. Whaley says if elected, she will raise the minimum wage for all Ohioans to $15 an hour. There's still another primary to go in Ohio. That's because of the ongoing redistricting battle. The commission met this week ahead of a Friday deadline to submit new maps to the state Supreme Court. That meeting got heated at times with people shouting at the lawmakers. 10 TV's Olivia Eugenio was there.
Thursday's meeting was incredibly heated. The vote was 4-3, so not along party lines. Auditor Faber voted against the map, but for different reasons than the 2 Democrats.
This is the set of maps that were approved by 4 Republicans Thursday evening, the same maps that the state Supreme Court said unfairly favored Republicans.
It is clear to me that it is impossible to proceed with an August 2nd primary with any map other than map 3.
But not everyone was happy.
It's disappointing that they are so egregious in their disrespect for the rule of law and voters, but here we are.
The Ohio Supreme Court gave the commission until Friday to submit maps so an August 2nd primary could happen. Secretary of State Frank LaRose read a lengthy statement ahead of Thursday's vote, saying the only way that could happen was if they submitted the maps that were struck down back in March.
August 2nd, 2022 is the latest date by which Ohio can conduct a primary election.
So what happens if the maps are found unconstitutional again by the state Supreme Court? Federal judges decided last month if a plan is not in place by May 28th, then the third set of maps will be used, the ones that were decided on Thursday night. But these districts would only be in place for the 2022 election.
There's more work for the commission to do. We've got to look at the next election cycle. So, we're not done yet.
Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, as well as Governor Mike DeWine, left during the recess following the vote. The governor's press secretary saying they had prior commitments. At the State House, Olivia Eugenio, 10 TV News.
Governor DeWine is facing legal action involving the First Energy bribery scandal, accused of not being forthcoming. You might remember the corruption case broke back in 2020. Ohio's Speaker of the House was charged with racketeering. It remains the biggest public corruption scandal in state history. Democrats claim Governor DeWine is hiding what he knew about it.
I think the real question is, what are they hiding? And that is what we are trying to get accountability for. Sending a redacted calendar as the governor of Ohio is absolutely beyond the pale. You are accountable to the people for what you do with your time. And so until we get clear, real, true public records disclosure from the governor's office, we're not going to stop the work to do that accountability for Ohio voters. And if there's nothing to hide on HB6, I don't know why on earth you would send a redacted calendar out.
Now, we asked the governor's office for a response. They say the Democratic Party has all the information they requested and called the lawsuit a fishing expedition in a lake that has no fish. The statement went on to call DeWine one of the most transparent public officials in Ohio, saying if the ODP wants to argue otherwise, good luck to them because they are dead wrong. Again, that's a statement from the office of Governor Mike DeWine. Now, the leaked U.S. Supreme Court draft opinion on Roe v. Wade sparked protests and debates across the country this week. Up next, we hear from both sides in that debate, and we look at what happens in Ohio if abortion is banned and the implications beyond abortion rights if the draft turns out to be the court's final rule. There were protests all over the country and here in Ohio over that leaked U.S. Supreme Court draft opinion that would overturn Roe v. Wade. The rain did not stop a few dozen people from gathering to have their voices heard in Columbus this week.
It puts women's health care in danger everywhere. It puts women in danger. It puts our society a huge step backwards. And that's why I'm here. So I feel like I can't do nothing.
If Roe v. Wade is overturned, abortion rights will likely be up to each state. And some states have already instituted so-called trigger laws. Essentially, those states would allow abortion the moment Roe v. Wade is overturned. We have a map. The states in blue have that legislation on the books. Closest to us, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Missouri. Ohio has banned abortion after 6 weeks, but it does not have a so-called trigger law. Some Republicans want to change that. They've introduced House Bill 598 and Senate Bill 123. They are similar and called the Human Life Protection Act. Those pieces of legislation remain in committee. Now, in response to the draft opinion, 2 Democrats plan to introduce an amendment to guarantee reproductive freedom to all Ohioans. The proposed amendment would ensure Ohioans are able to obtain surgical and medical abortion services. These draft opinions can always change. This is not set in stone, but still, it has ignited a firestorm. Here's a look at both sides of the debate.
They're giving the power back to the people. They're giving the power back to Ohioans and then all the residents of other states, too, to make their own decision. They're not telling them how to live. They're not telling them which way to go on this. They're saying it's up to you.
That means getting childcare, getting time off of work, having to travel hundreds of miles to get care. And those barriers could be insurmountable for many people.
And now we turn to 10 TV's Brittany Bailey for a look at the impact on abortion if it's banned in Ohio.
Roe v. Wade has got to go. Hey, hey! Protesting for or against abortion is nothing new in this country, but it's certainly back front and center this week.
A lot of confusion, but abortion is still legal here in Ohio right now, and Planned Parenthood's doors are still open.
For how long is the real question. Ohio is one of several states where if Roe v. Wade falls, a ban on abortion is either certain or likely. So first, we wanted to find out who's getting abortions in Ohio. For that, we pulled data from the Ohio Department of Health. In general, we're talking about a non-white woman in her 20s who has never been married, and she's getting the procedure in the first 9 weeks.
So we wrote a paper saying what would happen to patients in Ohio who needed abortion care if the trigger ban passed and if Roe versus Wade were to be overturned by the Supreme Court.
That's Dr. Allison Norris with OSU and the Ohio Policy Evaluation Network. She recently worked on 2 studies showing the impact on Ohioans if abortion were to be banned.
For people who are poor, the hurdle of having a car, driving hundreds of miles, potentially an overnight stay, childcare, missing work, those can become insurmountable to people who don't have a lot of financial resources.
The study found that right now, people in all 88 counties in Ohio are within 99 miles of a clinic that provides abortions. If Ohio were to ban abortion, forcing patients to go to Michigan or perhaps Pennsylvania, they would have to travel 7 times longer on average. If abortion is then banned in those states, that number jumps to 10 times longer.
So this really does become a stark inequity where people who have money will still be able to get this very ordinary, safe health care, and people who don't have money will be denied that opportunity.
The impact would be felt mostly by those who are low income and people of color who already face greater complications in childbirth.
For folks who cannot obtain an abortion, there's a number of downstream consequences that are harmful for people's ability to live their best life. People who don't obtain an abortion that they need and want are more likely to live in poverty. They're more likely to stay with an abusive partner. They're less likely to achieve their life goals. So in so many ways, access to abortion is a really critical part of living one's best life.
And again, that was Brittany Bailey reporting. The Ohio Department of Health has information that shows us how many abortions are happening in Ohio. In 2020, more than 20,000 abortions were performed in the state, but that number has been steadily declining in the past 2 decades. Since the year 2000, abortions have dropped each year on average by about 720. That leaked draft opinion has people asking about the implications beyond abortion rights if it turns out to be the court's final rule. Abby Lorico from our Verify team did some digging on the possibilities.
Abortion rights are up for discussion in the Supreme Court this term because of a challenge to restrictions in Mississippi. But it's also about the Constitution of the United States and which rights are clearly defined, which are implied, and which are not protected. The Roe v. Wade decision back in 1973 came down to right to privacy, which usually rests on 2 things: due process rights and the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which protects the right to life, liberty, and property. But this draft says the right to an abortion was wrongly considered an implied constitutional right in Roe v. Wade. So let's verify. What other decisions rest on those implied rights? Our sources are Caroline Fredrickson, a Georgetown law professor, and Robert Peck, a constitutional law expert.
There's an interesting philosophical decision that's embodied in this opinion, and that is, to what extent are rights implied by the Constitution? This opinion asserts that abortion is not one of those implied rights.
There are other subsequent decisions dealing with equal marriage, gay marriage, and so forth that rest on the same foundation.
The idea of an implied right to privacy is the foundation of these other big decisions, like Obergefell versus Hodges, the case that legalized gay marriage, and Loving versus Virginia, the case that legalized interracial marriage, as well as Griswold versus Connecticut, which affords married couples the constitutional right to buy and use contraceptives, and Lawrence versus Texas, which made same-sex sexual activity legal in 2003. As for whether those cases are at risk, it's hard to say. Justice Samuel Alito, author of the draft opinion, argues the abortion issue is, quote, critically different from any other right that this court has held to fall within the 14th Amendment's protection of liberty. But for nearly 50 years, abortion has been considered a procedure that fell under the implied rights umbrella.
It basically is an invitation to those who oppose those decisions to come back to the Supreme Court, frame your arguments the same way that this case, the opinion in this case, was framed, and then see if you can get the same result.
So while some legal analysts say Alito has addressed those other rights in this draft opinion, others are concerned this decision is like a roadmap for overturning those rights as well. The Supreme Court decides which rights are guaranteed in the Constitution, explicit or implied, which means we'll have to watch for what happens next. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
Still ahead, the former director of the Ohio Department of Health is on the move. We're talking with Dr. Amy Acton about her next project and its impact on Ohioans. She was once the face of the fight against COVID-19 in our state. Then Dr. Amy Acton took a step back from the public spotlight. But now she's back and ready to lead another project. Dr. Acton will now lead a project that brings together two of her passions, health and nature. It's called Rapid 5. 10 TV's Brittany Bailey talked with her to learn more about it.
My new title is President and CEO of Rapid 5, which stands for Rivers and Parks Imagination Design. I do see myself as sort of a chief health strategist and really an ambassador of one of the most amazing visions I've seen to help the health and well-being of our community.
Rapid 5's a vision. It's a vision for a regional park system along all 5 of our major stream corridors and river corridors in Central Ohio. It's a great opportunity that we identified through an effort of the Urban Land Institute and MORPC, and we unveiled last summer.
What we're looking at is 145 miles of integrated park system. This would be the largest in the country. I should say that this puts us within a mile to a mile and a half, every person to nature. And that's profound. That can change lives.
We want to make sure that every corner of our community is connected to that. You can get outside, you can enjoy the views, you can get a little bit of exercise, get a little bit of nature. That's really important to quality of life. It's really important to being the kind of place we want to be here. But the vision here is if you want to take your family out for the afternoon, you want to walk a mile or two with your kids or ride their bikes and maybe have ice cream. Maybe you want to just leave your house and leave the car behind and be able to walk to a trail that's close enough. This will allow you to do that.
This is a beautiful vision. It is, at heart, connecting us to nature and one another.
I was tired of us apologizing for not having an ocean or not having mountains. What we do have in Central Ohio are some amazing stream and river corridors that are equally distributed across Central Ohio, and it just seemed like that the time had come to begin to develop and celebrate those and quit apologizing for what we don't have and embrace what we do.
I can tell you, once I saw this, I could not unsee it. You can't imagine Columbus being anything but this vision of this healthy, vibrant life that we share together.
Rapid 5 will be a nonprofit geared toward encouraging public-private partnership in growing this park and waterway system. In today's Note of Promise, we look to the future of the nearly 1,000 Columbus City School students who are going to Columbus State Community College through the Columbus Promise program. The program will allow students to attend school for free. City Council and Superintendent Dr. Talisa Dixon announced CCS has seen 43% more students fill out that FAFSA application for financial aid. Council President Shannon Hardin says this is a huge step in getting students on their way.
They think that the college and training after high school isn't for them. They think it's too expensive and they will be burdened with student debt. Our young people deserve a chance to learn, earn, and start a career. And Columbus is a stepping up with our partners to test the promise and give them a debt-free access and path to jobs.
Hardin went on to say this program will allow students to transfer to the college of their choice if they want to pursue further education. We certainly thank you for joining us today. We want to say Happy Mother's Day to those of you who are moms or like moms to young people. Have a great day.